Okay, so just a quick note on the difference between absolute pressure and gauge pressure, because most of the time what you're looking at is gauge pressure, and I'm going to explain the difference here. Um, Gauge pressure is relative to atmosphere, and that's actually how most gauges work. I mean, let's think about a tire. So here's a valve stem coming out, and you're going to put your little pressure gauge on it. You got a little pressure gauge, and out comes the gauge reading, and that really just whatever the pressure is here generates the force that causes this to come out. Well, that's the gauge pressure. And that, typically you're going to like 32 psi, which is about 2 atmospheres. Okay. Suppose you didn't have the tire on a rim of any sort, or suppose there's not even a tire on there because the valve stem is part of the rim. Um, there's not a tire there, and you put this gauge on there. What do you get? You get 0 psi. Why do you get 0 psi? Right? There's not a tire there, but there's still 1 atmosphere, or about 15 psi. The thing is, there's also 15 psi out here. So gauge pressure is really giving you, if I could write, the the difference between atmosphere and the pressure you're after. Absolute pressure would be you have to add on whatever the atmospheric pressure is out here to the 32 psi you're after. And why don't we worry about that? Well, think about your tire. Here's your tire in profile with the wheel in the middle. Well, we don't worry about that because the 32 psi, if we, all right, let's go ahead and add 15 to this, 47 psi, 47 psi inside here. Well, out here, there's 15 psi. And so your tire doesn't have to hold back that 15 psi because it's out here and the atmosphere is already doing it, right? So that's why we're only worried about the gauge pressure on most things. 32 psi on your tires, about that. And so that's the difference between gauge and absolute. And the reason we don't worry about absolute pressure all that much is really simple because the atmosphere pressure is on both sides and working with us on both sides. And so it's not an issue. Um, and that's it for my little bit on gauge pressure.